Okay, today we're going to finish our book on David Mortimer Baxter, Promises. We are on chapter 11. Chapter 11 is Stirring Things Up. The hall fell silent. I stood up with a smile on my face. This was definitely something I had planned for. I only wear one of her dresses, I said firmly. Some people think it looks better on me than her. Next question. The hall erupted into laughter. It seemed like everyone had decided my answer was a joke. Rose scowled at me. Mrs. Stacy ended the question time. Rose got up for a few last words. She seemed a little mad, like things hadn't worked out the way she planned. If you vote for David Baxter tomorrow, you'll be voting for confusion, she said firmly. Gran booed loudly. A class president needs to be fair, to be bold yet calm, to be strong and able to make the right decisions. A class president needs to understand how to organize a class party, how to choose the right activity and the right food and drink. She pointed to me, like I was on trial for murder. David Baxter is not the person for the job. The only person who can fulfill the job stands before you now. Vote for Rose Thornton, she said loudly. Rose's Gigi's clapped, yelled, and cheered like they were at a rock concert. Other people clapped politely. A few booed again. Rose returned to her seat. I grabbed my debate speech notes from the floor. I went to the lectern, and I waited for the noise to calm down. I looked at the things that Joe had written: leadership, helping, concern. I grabbed the lectern with both hands, cleared my throat. I looked down at my notes again. If you vote for me tomorrow, I began. I tried looking at just one person in the crowd. That just happened to be Luke Firth, with his shiny class president badge. He nodded and smiled at me. If you, I stuttered. Rose laughed. All I could think of was the last thing Luke had said to me. Why did I want to be class president? The fact was, I didn't want to be. If you vote for me tomorrow, I continued, you'll be voting for the wrong person. A gasp went through the crowd. People began talking. I held up my hands and the hall fell silent. These are the things I think a good class president should be, I said. Then I read out the speech that Joe had written. Honesty, I finished. If this is what you are looking for in a class president, then the person you should be voting for is Luke Firth. People began talking loudly. Quiet, please, said Miss Stacy. I could see Mr. Woods making his way to the stage. I didn't have long before he'd take over the microphone. Luke Firth is our class president now, I babbled. He has been class president all year, and he's really good at it. Everybody likes him. He was going away, and now he's not. And I think he should still be our class president, because he's the best person for the job. If we have an election tomorrow, I am asking you to vote for Luke Firth, because I don't want the job. This time the crowd went wild. Everybody looked at Luke Firth. People were yelling. Miss Stacy was standing on the side of the stage. Her arms were crossed, and she had a strange look on her face, like she was happy or something. Rose Thornton stood up. I was glad there were a lot of people looking around. She looked like she could strangle me with her bare hands. Mr. Wood made it to the stage. He was talking quickly to Miss Stacy, who was nodding her head. I looked down at the front row. Joe and Beck were both stunned. Zoe was smiling and clapping. I was shocked. Harry was holding his nose with one hand and giving me the thumbs down with the other. Gran was standing, pounding her stick on the floor. Mom was making her way over to Mrs. Thornton, who seemed to be crying. Mr. Woods finally took the microphone. You certainly know how to stir things up, he muttered to me. Mr. Woods was pretty good at calming everyone down. He explained about the change in Luke's plans, I have talked with Miss Stacy and we've decided who the class president will be, he said. A buzz ran through the room. Miss Thornton had stopped sobbing. For the first time I noticed Victor Snedden. He looked like a sad puppy, all droopy and dull. I realized that he had just lost his chance of getting a date with Zoe. I figured I better stay out of his way for the rest of my life. Mr. Woods waited for quiet, then continued. The class president for Miss Stacy's grade 3 class for the rest of the year. A loud hiccup came from the audience. I think it was Mrs. Thornton. Is Luke Firth. There were screams from the crowd, some happy, some not. And Rose Thornton. What? The crowd went crazy. Joe and Beck hadn't moved since I'd announced I wasn't running for class president. I looked over at Rose. She looked confused. Mr. Woods asked Luke Firth to come up to the stage. Luke and Rose walked to the lectern. Rose pushed Luke out of the way. Thank you very much, she gushed. I can't believe it. It was like she had won an Academy Award or something. Luke moved forward, but Rose pushed him away. I just need to thank a few people, she continued. Like to thank Kaya, my manager. She clapped and people followed her lead. Like to thank my poster people, my speech writers, and there was some more clapping. My heart goes out to David Mortimer Baxter for losing, she said seriously. Then she turned to me and clapped again. Losing? I'd just given the class president position to Rose on a plate. And a big thank you to Luke for sharing this position with me. That time there was real applause. Finally, I yawned. I'd like to thank all those people who believed in me. You know who you are, she said, pointing to the audience. Followed a finger and saw Mrs. Thornton sobbing again. Mr. Woods finally got Rose away from the microphone. And now a few words from our class president winner, Luke Firth. Luke stood up to the microphone. He pulled it down so he could reach it. Thank you, he said. Cloud went wild. I slipped away through the curtain. I walked to the nurse's office. Mrs. Schlick, our school nurse, was grumbling as usual. She was busy trying to count all the things that were in her medicine cabinet. You don't need a bandage, do you? She asked, shaking her fluffy hair at me. I just counted those. No, Miss Schlick, I said. I think I just need to lie down. I just made that bed, she said grumpily. I promised not to mess it up. I lay down and thought about the good things and the bad things about not being class president. It was getting confusing. I grabbed a piece of paper from Miss Schlick's desk and a pencil from the shelf and wrote it out. Good things. Won't have to stand up and make speeches. Luke Firth gets to keep his class president badge. I won't have to stay in during lunchtime and do class president stuff. I don't have to set a good example. I don't have to keep any of my promises. Joe might stop being so serious. Bad things. Rose Thornton will have to stand up and give speeches. I won't get a shiny badge. Rose might ban smashing Schmorgan pencil cases. Rose Thornton might get me in trouble with Miss Stacy when I don't set a good example. Some people might be mad at me because I don't have to keep any of my promises. I might spend a lot of time on the hot seat because I'm late for school. Miss Stacy finally found me. There are a whole lot of people that want to see you, she said with a smile. I bet there are, I thought. I shoved the list in my pocket. Okay, I said. Turned out that Miss Stacy's surprise had been a party after the debate. There was a lot of food, mostly donated by Mrs. Thornton. There was fruit punch and a large cake with the words, Congratulations, David Mortimer Baxter on it. How embarrassing. I made it, said Gran. It took me a whole day, so you better have some. Sorry for not being class president, Gran, I said. Nonsense, said Gran. Then she bashed her way to the drink table. Found Beck and Joe. Joe was stuffing as many marshmallows into his mouth as it could. Seemed like my campaign manager had left, leaving my crazy friend behind. 16, counted Beck. 17. Hi, I said. Do you forgive me? Hey, sure, said Beck. But all that work you did, I said. Beck shrugged. I like doing that stuff, and I'll get graded for it anyway. Joe was moving his mouth, but I couldn't understand a word he said. I'll get him some punch, said Beck. The punch didn't work. There was no room in Joe's mouth for anything else. Finally, Joe went outside and cleared his mouth. When he came back, I didn't ask where it all went. Hey, he said. Hey yourself. We stood there looking around. I just want to say, I began. David, I said. David, said Joe at the same time. You first, I said. David, I think I might have been a little out of control, said Joe. All those promises we made, all those things we said about Rose. I know, I said. I knew you didn't want to be class president, said Joe, but I pushed you. Next time I'll tell you to back off, I said. It's just that I really enjoyed being a campaign manager. People looked up to me. I had power, I asked. A briefcase, said Joe. Rose slithered up, looking a little distracted. Hello, she said. She was dragging Luke behind her. Joe nudged me. Maybe he thought I should apologize to Rose. I just wanted to say that things are really going to change around here. Keeping my eye on all three of you, she began. Which eye? Asked Joe. And you won't be getting away, said Rose. You really need 3 eyes, said Joe. That would make it easier. With anything, finished Rose. Changed my mind about making an apology. Rose walked off and left Luke, who looked confused. She can't ban smashing Morgan pencil cases, can she? I'll try to keep her in line, said Luke. And David? Thanks. Sure, I said. Rose came back and dragged Luke away. I can't get my surprise finale to work, she complained. Poor Luke, said Beck. Then Mom and Gran and Zoe and Harry walked over. They were all talking at once. I think they thought I'd done the right thing. Except Harry, of course. Then Mom pulled Harry and me aside. What's been going on with the chores at home, she demanded. I noticed that Harry seemed to be doing your chores, David. Then today I got a call from Miss McCafferty. He got home this afternoon to find his prize, roses wilted. Harry, I whispered. What? He said. There weren't any roses on your chore list. He was right. David, you promised that you'd water Mr. McCafferty's garden. Poor man is beside himself. I made a deal with Harry, I explained. He was going to do all my chores. It was your promise, said Mom. It was up to you to keep it. Jake Davern swung by and smacked me on the shoulder. Joe followed closely behind. I'll try to explain, David, said Joe. So when do we get to sponsor a monkey, Jake asked. We don't, I said. That was only if I won the election. But that's not fair, said Jake. Look, that wasn't even a core promise, explained Joe. It probably wouldn't have happened anyway. I was trying to get Joe to stop talking. I didn't think Mom would understand about election promises. Well, I'm sick of doing David's chores, Harry piped in. I think you should do mine. Then there was a large bang. It worked, yelled Rose. A whole cloud of balloons floated down from the ceiling. The balloons that had Rose's face painted on them. I picked up one. She looked a little better with a green face. You and I need to have a serious talk, David Baxter, said Mom. Jake stuck a balloon under the back of his sweater and was pretending to be a camel. Beck and Joe were bouncing balloons onto each other's heads. I found Luke in the crowd. He was picking up balloons, trying to make everything clean. I loved not being class president. Yes, Mom, I said. And that's not a threat, she said, as a balloon drifted onto her head. That's a promise.